What's one of the most important questions you can ask a filmmaker about filmmaking and get the most wildly different and absolutely correct responses? Ask a filmmaker what the biggest mistake new filmmakers make when starting out. We posed this question to several Story and Heart filmmakers, and if you're just starting out, you're going to want to watch this.
Hey there, I'm Joey from 31 Films. I'm going to talk about the biggest mistakes a new filmmaker can make. When I think about what we struggled with a lot when we first started making films, I think about our story structure, or lack thereof. If new filmmakers can take the time to learn about story structure and what it actually is, it can take a lot of guessing out of what makes great stories great. So not learning about story structure is easily one of the worst mistakes a new filmmaker can make. When we first began creating stories, we were going primarily on intuition. Sometimes our stories worked, and it was wonderful, but we didn't understand how. Other times we weren't so lucky, and we couldn't draw out the story, and didn't understand why not. We were just kind of taking a swing at it. But once we understood story structure, that all changed. We were no longer swinging and missing. We knew how to line up the hit every time. After learning the fundamentals of story structure, we no longer had to wish for the stars to align to make a great film. We knew how to get the stars exactly where we wanted them, and anything extra was just pixie dust. So not learning the basics of story structure is definitely one of the biggest mistakes new filmmakers can make.
For 31 Films, it was important to learn the fundamentals of story structure. For Patrick Moreau of Still Motion, it was about not having to ask permission to believe in what he and the studio were doing.
I can remember starting out in filmmaking, spending hours reading forums, viewing others' work, wondering if my ideas or my camera or my lights were good enough. Early on, I started researching using a full body-mounted Steadicam for weddings. As I asked around, everybody seemed to think that it was too expensive, too much of a distraction, or just too much for a wedding. The biggest mistake I made was thinking that I needed permission. Permission from other filmmakers that I or my gear was good enough, or the right fit. Permission from a client that my ideas or creative was strong enough. The day we, as a studio, stopped waiting for permission and started really believing in ourselves, everything changed. Rather than telling stories the way the industry and clients expected, we started telling them the way we dreamed of, and then found new clients that connected with that. And the more we followed our vision and found our style, the gear started to matter less and less. Don't wait for permission. If you believe in a story, find a way to bring it to life, even if you end up doing it pro bono. Following what feels right to you will end up getting you the right paid work much quicker than spending years doing the wrong paid work and hoping to catch a break. And we ended up getting that Steadicam for weddings. One of the first ones we shot got noticed by Canon Canada, and they turned the real footage from a wedding into a national commercial that aired on primetime.
Mike Sutton believes that gear has to do with one of the biggest mistakes for new filmmakers.
Hello there, I'm Mike Sutton, co-founder of Frozen Prosperity. I've been a filmmaker for more than 20 years, and I think the biggest mistake that new filmmakers make has to do with buying gear and not seeing the bigger picture. Just starting out, filmmakers tend to just look at the lowest common denominator for gear because it fits the budget, but not really thinking about the future. The $2,400 camera may seem affordable now, but the $200 part you buy here to make this shot work, then the $800 part to make another shot work, soon the stuff adds up to thousands and thousands of dollars. Often I see folks who buy one camera only to come back the next week to purchase more gear, mounts, batteries, stabilizers, and so on, because they didn't take those aspects into consideration in the first place. So I think the biggest mistake that filmmakers make when they're first starting out is not seeing the big picture when they're buying gear. Think about the future and what kind of films you want to make and what level you want to work at, and use those considerations to inform your investments.
On the same subject, but with a completely different take, let's hear what the guys from Gnarly Bay have to say about gear and beginner mistakes.
Hey there, this is Dana from Gnarly Bay. If I had to name the biggest mistake that I think most new filmmakers make, it would be thinking that they need the most expensive and complex equipment to tell good stories. Filmmaking is way more about ingenuity and intuition than having the latest top-of-the-line whatever. A trip we took for a shoot in Nicaragua is a good example of the importance of ingenuity in filmmaking. Everything we had brought to shoot, our Movi, our drone, our C300, our 1DC, literally everything didn't make it through customs. It was a huge setback, but we persevered. After landing in Nicaragua, we basically had to spend all night scavenging throughout the sketchy parts of Managua to find a C100, a 60D, a few lenses, and some janky sliders. And with a lot of ingenuity, we somehow made the shoot work. We used a wheelchair for a dolly. We only had one screw between a variety of tripod plates, which meant we had to remove it and change the plate every time we wanted to change cameras. It was stressful and it was hot, but we made it work with the limited equipment we had, and we pulled it off. We were not limited by our equipment. We were propelled by our ingenuity. A large part of shooting with ingenuity and intuition is shooting smart. The same day we got our 7D camera, we wanted to go and test it out. So we headed to the local bar with our 7D and a borrowed 35 1.4. That's it. At the bar, a band was performing No Woman, No Cry. So we filmed the song, moving through multiple angles, and then got B-roll coverage while the band played other songs throughout the night. We then cut it the next day, uploaded it to YouTube, and since then it has gotten over 200,000 views. Most comments on the post ask about how many cameras we used. We did a lot with a little. We were smart about our shots, and we were able to tell a fuller story. So that is why we think that one of the biggest mistakes a filmmaker can make is focusing too much on equipment rather than ingenuity and intuition. You don't need the latest tools or a ton of gear to tell amazing stories.
So, there are 4 filmmakers with completely different takes on what to avoid when you're starting out. Share one mistake that you made so that others can learn from it in the comments below.
Did you just learn something new to up your filmmaking game? Well, learn even more with our other tutorials. And remember to subscribe to know when new videos are released. Got questions? Ask away in the comments section. Or just say hi. Hi. How you doing? I'm good. If you're asking.